In the previous video, we went back in time and once again Madame Zhu was shown at the scene of the accident, but now another figure is added to the fateful day, as Gu Wen has also appeared at the scene. Moving on to our protagonists, Gu Wen believes that meeting Du He again could mean that this is his second chance and to recreate that moment they had with fireflies 200 years ago. The man fills his office with them. The next day we can see that our couple are getting closer to each other, but something worries Gu Wen, because things remind the protagonist of the tragedies in her life. For example, when she has an accident, it reminds her of what happened to her parents, and as the man wants to make her happy all the time, he decides to talk to the person who loves her most after him. Suk-hoon understands what Gu Wen means when he explains the situation. The woman's cousin comments that she once told him that her happiest years were the short time she spent with her parents, so Suk-hoon believes that as Du He has known unhappiness in the midst of happiness, she may have become afraid of experiencing it again, so she keeps herself contained, blaming herself for everything that has happened. Meanwhile, the protagonist is in a meeting with her team deciding where her company's next event will be, and after one of them suggests that it be at Gu Wen's theater, she approves the proposal. At night, Gu Wen is still worried that his wife will never be able to relax during this lifetime, so he does everything in his power to make her better. Like when he sees her crying during a dream, the man decides to enter it and comfort her, then he uses his powers so that at least in this fantasy world, the protagonist can have a moment with those she misses so much. The next day, we see that the star Jean is still in Korea, as she still has a few more performances in the theater, so she talks to Gu Wen about it and comments again that after her commitments are over, the woman will go abroad, as it's the only way her love won't harm the man, since she has recognized that her love for him is poisonous. Later, we see Gu Wen closing another contract. The demon had to find someone quickly, as a fire started in his fingers, but instead, the man found the gang that appointed him as boss, and in the end, Gu Wen tells them that he is a demon. The men were surprised, but pleased to learn that he is a powerful being. Meanwhile, Du He receives an unpleasant phone call from Suk Min inviting her to a family dinner at his house, and even though she doesn't want to go, she accepts. In the next scene, we see Gu Wen picking up the protagonist at the company so they can go home, and the man surprises her when he arrives with a beautiful bouquet of flowers that represent happiness. At the same time at Suk Min's house, his wife, who is in deep mourning for the couple's son, decides in a moment of lucidity to take the things that give her husband away as a criminal from the safe in his office, and there she comes across the demon's book. Unfortunately, not long afterwards she is caught, and of course Suk Min punishes her for it. Now on to the family dinner, starting with Gu Wen, who notices that Suk Min's wife's arm is bruised when she goes to put the food on the table. And the main reason the man has invited everyone to his house is because he wants to change the way his mother handled the company, but of course with the shareholders on his tail, it will be difficult to do that. So Suk Min suggests that everyone pass on their shares so that he can have more and more power inside. Suk-hoon is the first to deny the request, and Du He then leaves, making his position on the matter clear, while Suk Min's sister says she'll think about it, but Suan is soon threatened by her firstborn if she doesn't accept. The next day, Suk-hoon is already beginning to see the repercussions of having denied Suk Min's request, and the employees will become temporary with the end of the work accident committee. Suk-hoon warns him about the consequences of his doing this, so Suk Min decides to fire him from his job, and a power struggle begins, which, by the way, he himself started as a joke. Then, when he leaves the company, Du He's cousin calls to tell him what's going on. Meanwhile, Gu Wen goes back to look for the demon's book, and knowing that it was in Suk Min's house, he decides to go after the weakest end that resides there, the man's wife. It becomes even easier to deal with her when Gu Wen discovers that she has been hospitalized, so the man enters the room where the woman is and tells her that he can get her out of hell if she cooperates. After some thought, Seare ends up telling Gu Wen about the book and everything her husband had planned, including ordering Du He's death. Meanwhile, the protagonist goes to Suk Min after what her cousin had told her, and during their discussion, she realizes that Suk Min is the one who ordered the stalker, after he talks about finally getting out of the egg after his mother's death, which refers to the nickname he used to remain anonymous. When he realizes that Do-hee has told him the whole truth, Suk-min starts to get onto her. Angry, he tells her that Madame Ju was responsible for the death of the girl's parents and, to prove it, the man reproduces a conversation his mother had with her parents before they died. Then Suk-min angrily starts to put his hands around her neck, and Do-hee only doesn't lose her life because Gu-won shows up in time to save her. The demon takes them to that tall tower he uses to find people to sign contracts, and while talking to Suk-min holding him by his tie, Gu-won tells him that at that very moment, Sara is at the police station talking about everything she knows about her husband's crimes, and then, something nobody expected happens. The man undoes the knot of his tie, and with that, he ends up falling from a considerable height. That same night, news spread that Suk-min was responsible for everything that had happened to the company and the family, along with his possible death. Even though the man's body hasn't been found, Gu-won believes that he isn't alive, as he wasn't able to use his powers to find him. When Suk-hoon arrives at the apartment, Do-hee tells him about what Suk-min had said about Madame Ju being responsible for her parents' deaths. The woman's cousin tries to calm her down by saying that Suk-min was only trying to torment her, but when he's alone with Gu-won, he's sincere when he says that if it's true, he'll destroy Do-hee. In the next scene, Suk-hoon receives an unexpected visit from the star Jean, and the two end up having lunch together. It turns out that the woman has come to him to apologize for the way she acted that day and for not revealing her real intentions. Since Suk-hoon isn't one to hold grudges and is quite understandable, the man says he'll try to understand her. Meanwhile, at Gu-won's foundation, Sara brings him the book the man was looking for, and when he asks her if what Suk-min told Do-hee was true, she replies that she didn't know anything about it, but if her husband did, it's possible that it was. At the same time, the protagonist is in her office researching her parents' accident, and when she sees a photo of Mrs. Shin standing next to Madame Ju, Do-hee decides to call her to talk about it. The protagonist discovers that her secretary doesn't know much, as she had just started at the company. However, it was at this time that Madame Ju started using a cane, even though apparently nothing had happened to her. Do-hee is increasingly confused as to whether she should go after the truth. Of course, she is terrified of discovering that the whole construction of her relationship with Madame Ju was a lie. But Gu-won is there to put the protagonist's feet on the ground, because regardless of the answer, in her last moment of pain, Madame Ju texted only Do-hee with the words that she loved her. So, reassured by this, the protagonist decides to go after the one who knows everything, the priest to whom Madame Ju went to confession. As soon as the man saw Do-hee, he seemed to know what it was all about, and also that Gu-won was the demon that Madame Ju had seen years ago. So, asking for a moment alone with Do-hee, the man tells her the truth about her parents' accident. Father Michael says that Madame Ju felt tormented until the last second of her life for not having been completely honest with the protagonist, and asked that if she couldn't find the courage to tell the truth, he should do it for her. Returning to the past, Do-hee's father went to Madame Ju after discovering that she had tampered with some tests that indicated that some people were being harmed, in fact losing their lives because of something involving the company, and the woman had done this so as not to miss out on new big offers that were to come. So the man, who didn't agree with any of it, said he was going to expose her to the world, so he got his wife together, got in a car and sped off home to see his daughter before his time ran out. However, on the way, while fighting on the road with Madame Ju, who was trying to stop the couple's vehicle, an accident happened and, moreover, 10 years ago, the man had made a contract with Gu-won, who has now returned to seek his soul. Madame Ju ended up seeing the devil, and he even offered her a contract, but from that moment on, the lady changed the way she saw life. After encountering the devil, she stopped herself from becoming one. After the protagonist leaves the church, she doesn't tell her husband what she's discovered and just pretends that Madame Ju had nothing to do with the accident, nor did he. However, the man knows something is wrong when he hears his wife crying in the bathroom, and as she won't tell him, Gu-won goes to the priest, who tells him the truth and asks him to stay away from Do-hee. When Gu-won returns home early in the morning, he doesn't find the protagonist there, so he uses his powers to be taken to her and ends up teleporting to the cemetery and hearing Do-hee talking to Madame Ju's tombstone. His wife has doubts. If the lady had told him the truth, would she have fallen in love with Gu-won? Later, Do-hee goes to her husband's foundation to talk to Mr. Park about something, and as he has a meeting about to start, she arranges to wait for him in Gu-won's office. Suddenly, a desperate woman enters the office and soon Gu-won appears, both unaware that the protagonist is there. It turns out that her contract is up and the woman would like to do another one, but there are no negotiations with the demon, so she ends up losing her life. And Do-hee is shocked to see everything, at which point she discovers that the clocks represent the contracts, so everything starts to get scarier and scarier for her, as the woman thinks that her father once had his time on one of these walls. As soon as her husband leaves the office, the protagonist takes the opportunity to leave, while Mr. Park comments to Gu-won that the woman was there waiting for him and the demon realizes what she may have seen. On the way out of the foundation, Do-hee walks away when her husband tries to approach her, and now their relationship is really shaken. At night, Gu-won is waiting for his wife in front of her company so they can talk, and in a square, the man says he will save her from hell, so the protagonist's husband disappears and Do-hee cries at his departure. What did you think of these episodes? I hope you enjoyed the summary. Leave your suggestions in the comments and subscribe. If you liked the video, like it and share it to help me out. Until next time.